But we've had about a million questions on this since the news was broken last night. Can you see the logic behind what England have done in leaving out both James Anderson and Stuart Broad?
No, I can't. I could certainly see an argument for giving Jimmy the tour off. I think with Stuart, not only because his performances have been fantastic, unimpeachable for the last at least a year, but probably longer than that. But also from the point of view of what he quite rightly said about trying to win what's right in front of you, or giving yourself at least the best chance of trying to win the games that are right in front of you. I find it quite bizarre that he didn't make the trip, and also, I think when it comes to Stuart in particular, and not so much Jimmy, but Stuart in particular, I think it's kind of a case that you just keep playing him until he plays no more. The idea of kind of resting and rotating somebody like Stuart Broad is just, for me, just doesn't make any sense. With Jimmy Anderson, I can kind of see it a little bit, and I still think that we're in the end game for Jimmy anyway. In which case, you might say, well, just keep playing him until there is no more left. But with Stuart, I kind of really don't understand the logic of him not going. The replacement for him, Matt Fisher's an interesting one. I was a bit blindsided by that, but he has certain attributes that might be of use in Test match cricket. He's tall. He kind of hits the pitch really hard, gets in close to the stumps. He's got a sort of a McGrath-like action through the crease. Not a comparison, but it's just it's a type of the way that he operates. And so he could be somebody whose game, whilst it hasn't been sort of massively eye-catching at first class level, could translate into something that will do good things in Test match cricket. But in terms of taking a team which looks on paper as though it can compete but win in the West Indies, and let's face it, this team needs a win, right? It needs maybe one Test match win, but it needs a series win. You're kind of thinking to yourself, well, I'd quite like to have had Stuart up my sleeve to play in all three Test matches and to lead what is going to be a relatively inexperienced attack, particularly given that England's sort of most senior bowler in all of that is Chris Woakes, and Woakes was anonymous in the Ashes. I'll hold my hands up. I thought that he turned a corner with the Kookaburra and all that, but he, although unlucky as the tour went a little bit further on, kind of just didn't dispel any of the issues that people have had with his performances overseas, and that's a worry. He's now our main guy on the trip.
I guess there are quite a few strands there that are quite hard to get your head around. One, I guess, is that it's exciting to see a couple of new faces in there, but England are likely to go into that first test with an attack of Ollie Robinson, Mark Wood, Chris Woakes and Jack Leach, which is the attack they start the Ashes with. And we can understand why they're backing Ollie Robinson and Mark Wood, both have been very good with the ball in the last year or so.
Yeah.
But so one, these new guys might not even play. And then two, I guess, this is an extremely big call to make under an interim head coach. Surely the new head coach wants to be the person who wants to make that decision. A new head coach might come in, look at the squad and say, there aren't many experienced Test match players who are used to being part of the winning side. I want every Test match I can get out of Anderson and Broad. That decision has partly been taken away from him because Collingwood, Strauss, Root, Stokes are all still going to be part of the England setup in one way or another when the new coach comes in. And that decision's slightly been taken out of the new coach's hands.
Well, I mean, the door's been left open by the comments that Andrew Strauss makes, and I hesitate to kind of to have a go at Strauss's logic because he's been here before as a captain and as a sort of a director of cricket, and both times he's made sort of big calls over big senior players, and both times he's been vindicated in the end. What I would say is, the position with both James and Stuart is very different from any that he's made before, because when he left out, or when he made the decision to leave out Hoggard and Harmison, their performances, although Hoggy was going okay, their performances were very much tailing off, or at least they weren't the outstanding bowlers in England's lineup at the time. Broad and Anderson are still England's outstanding bowlers in England's lineup. If you take Mark Wood out of the equation, and Mark Wood will play, Mark Wood is very much in that sort of top three. And as I said before, I can understand the logic of giving Jimmy the trip off. I mean, West Indies pitches, that kind of hit the pitch hard type thing. He'd be able to cope with it. It's no problem. But it just seems like unnecessarily mileage on his clock. Whereas for Stuart, he's exactly the sort of. You remember the furore last time he got left out down there for Sam Curran. Stuart is exactly the type of bowler that you want and need on West Indian surfaces, and so the case for him being there and perhaps not starting off in the summer, or being called time on in the summer if it didn't go up well in the West Indies, was compelling to have him go to the West Indies to prove that he still has the desire. Not that I don't think he needs to prove it, but just to prove to everybody else that, listen, I'm a Test match cricketer. I'm one of the best there has ever been, and I damn well deserve to be wearing the shirt. So look, I mean that will rumble on. Things go badly. You lose a toss and get spanked all over the place in the first one. Then Anderson and Broad, as it was in Brisbane, it's going to be the worst decision in the world. I go back to this. Jimmy, I get that. Stuart, not.
I think there'll be a couple of newspaper columns this weekend that are worth keeping an eye on from Messrs. Anderson and Broad.
Well, yeah.
Just trying to get my head around why Root and Stokes are part of that selection panel, why they might have made this call or been part of that call. I guess there were some clues there when Anderson had a niggle at Brisbane. Broad didn't play, which was a surprise, especially given the conditions there. And Anderson and Broad were criticised for bowling a little bit too short. At one point, I think it was during the Adelaide Test.
Adelaide, yeah.
When Stokes was captain for one Test match in the 2020 summer, Stuart Broad, who was arguably England's bowler of 2019, was left out of that one Test. So you kind of get the impression that if they don't want the two of them in the side, they don't really want them on the bench either. And it's not. We kind of had hints that it all has not been well behind the scenes, not as well as it could have been in the past.
Well, there is that whole thing whereby, and this is another strand to the discussion, whereby a new broom, and it's not a new broom. Joe Root is the most capped captain that England has ever had. Trying to kind of their marker upon a team full of new guys is much easier than doing it with guys who have been around forever, and every organisation goes through that. Whereby the old guard, whilst still performing and whilst aren't perhaps allowing you to move things forward in the way that you want to as a management group. And again, that's something that I get and I understand. However, you still, Kevin Peterson, it's been the same with other great players down the line. How much sort of interim pain are you willing to take? And how much are you willing to risk the fact that your job might end up being on the line if results continue to go on a downward curve in order to kind of make this point? And isn't the art of management being able to assimilate all of these people, the old guys, the new guys, and try to bring them together as a team? And if what they're saying is that Anderson and Broad's attitude or their belligerence or grumpiness or whatever around the group is something that's preventing the team from moving forward, then I would suggest that the batters who haven't managed to get England past 300 in the last 10 innings might wear cotton wool in the dressing room when they come in, so they can't hear them speaking, because what they're doing on the field is not a problem. The whole thing about the short length in Adelaide and all those types of things, the bowlers will turn around to you and say, listen, if the ball's not swinging, we're not pitching it up. And then as soon as it does, when the ball moves, we'll get it up a little bit further. It's kind of, that's a natural tendency. You defend when things are not in your favour, and you attack when they are. And these two blokes have got nearly 1,200 Test match wickets between them. I think they know. I think they understand and can figure it out. These are not a couple of newbies that have no idea. Look, it'll run and run. The Leach thing you mentioned before is very interesting. That I don't get at all.
What, that he's been
Honestly,
included?
I don't understand.
Why is that?
I do not understand, because over the course of the run up to the Ashes, they proved that they had no confidence in picking him whatsoever, right? That did everything in their power not to include him in teams against New Zealand and India up until the very end. Then they play him in Brisbane, which I don't have an issue with them playing him in Brisbane. We just shouldn't have batted first, you know. Crikey. But having had no cricket, they kind of, you know, he got spanked in Brisbane, and then leave him out on the one pitch where you must play the specialist spinner in Adelaide. Joe Root has shown no sign whatsoever of having any confidence in this guy. And to me, after getting the mauling that he got in Australia, for him now to be the sort of the number one guy as a spinner again just doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
You know, whether or not he is the best bowler that we've got in the country, spinner we've got in the country, which I'm starting to doubt very much. But you know, at what point do you just say, you know what, we're flogging the wrong horse here, and we try to bring somebody else in? I mean, if they've gone with Matt Parkinson, I'd have taken his brother as well. They've got, you know, leg spinner and left arm spinner in Leach and Parkinson. I'd have taken Callum Parkinson and said, you go.
Mm.
I know, you know, Antigua can turn. There might well be cause for the spinners to have some joy out there. But you know, put it this way: if he doesn't play all 3 Test matches and doesn't have a good time, then that really should be it. Because I don't see how you move forward from where that relationship is.
I hear what you're saying, but I'd argue that it's not been clear who among English spinners Root really does back, because Don Best, you know, he was taking out the attack in India after bowling badly, and we've basically not seen him since. Understandably, I guess. Matt Parkinson's been part of quite a few tours without ever getting a game. So you thought England have seen a lot of Matt Parkinson in the nets, and for one reason or another, despite his excellent first-class record, they've not picked him yet. So,
but he
changed in the Australia. He didn't play in the England Lions game. What's changed since then?
He is on the trip. I mean, the thing you're talking about there is not the spinner then per se. It's the captain, and that's another strand of conversation entirely, isn't it? You know, is part of the issue with England and their lack of trust in, or their the lack of improvement with the spin bowlers that have been picked, down to a captain who is naturally suspicious of them or doesn't handle them particularly well. I think there's plenty of evidence to show that potentially is a large slice of it. Which is again why I'm slightly confused, because it would have made sense to me if Joe Root, who stayed on as captain, who was his captain as part of the selection panel along with Taylor and everybody else, had said, you know what, it just isn't working out with myself and Jack Leach. Let's look somewhere else. What we're asking for is a change in that relationship. And if that doesn't happen, then, you know, who's going? Well, it ain't going to be Joe Root, is it? He has proven himself to be unsackable. He's sort of come through it relatively unscathed, with a remit to kind of go again and rebuild again. And so at the moment, he's not going anywhere.
And finally, there were loads of changes there. 8 players who were part of the Ashes group haven't made the tour this time. A few new faces: Alex Lees, Matt Fisher, who you mentioned. Matt Parsons back, Sakeem Mahmood's back. Were there any standout calls, either people who were discarded or people who were selected, that caught your eye?
Well, I mean, Lees is an interesting one. Again, someone that's come up on the rails a bit. Certainly wasn't anybody that was mentioned in dispatches towards the back end of last summer, as sort of guys who've had standout seasons, or, you know, who are young bolters who are kind of looking to make their way. He is you know, he's a little bit older, isn't he? He's of that sort of vintage whereby English players in particular tend to kind of start to become productive, and he's had 2 or 3 really good years at Durham, which rather, you know, his overall first class stats are not all that impressive, but if you separate out the last 3 years since his move up north, they've been pretty good, particularly at home. So I mean, I don't know. I can't tell you. Big tall guy, kind of. He reminds me a little bit of some of our older watchers might remember watching somebody like David Byas play. You know, obviously he's a former Yorkshire opening batter, big tall left-hander, and he has that similar sort of. He's not a smooth mover, put it this way. He's kind of a little bit stiff and robotic, but he's kind of tall and imposing. You wish him all the best because it looks as though he's going to get a start.
What do you make of the fact they've only selected 2 openers, one of whom has never played a test before, and there's no one in the squad who's willingly batted 3 in test cricket in recent times? I mean, it's been reported that Root's going to bat 3, but let's say someone goes down with COVID or an injury, I don't really know what they do.
I'm looking at the squad now. Nope, ask me another.
Would you ever gone on a tour which had such little cover for a position like that?
No, I mean, we'd always. I mean, my first trip to the Caribbean in 97, 98. We had what did we have? So it was Atherton, Stuart. Obviously, there was always going to be cover because Alec might keep wicket, so I was there as an opener. Who else did we have on the tour? I can't remember actually. Maybe there was only the 3 of us that were openers there. I can't remember. Someone would have to look that up. John Crawley was kind of like was a top order player. There were other options anyhow. I mean, I think Graham Hick ended up batting at 7 in some of the Test matches. So there was plenty of. Mark Ramprakash obviously was on the trip. Who batted 3 for Middlesex at the time. So there was top order cover. And you'd always have. And the last Ashes trip there was cover for openers. So yeah, that is a little bit surprising. What else is surprising? I suppose Ollie Robinson, after the stick that he got, neither Anderson or Broad have been criticised for their lack of fitness. So Robinson is go. I mean, I don't think that's a problem, to be honest with you. He performed superbly when he was able to.
Ollie Pope. I guess he's the only one who really struggled in Australia who's still there.
Yeah, Pope. I mean, he's picked on what they hope he will become, isn't he? And Dan Lawrence, I suppose, is somebody along with Craig Overton, 2 players who've kind of stayed in the squad, proving that old adage that you're a better player when you're not playing. They both have benefited from not having had a gig. And for Lawrence, it could be a big opportunity because I would be very surprised if Ollie Pope begins the trip if that's the way they decide to go at number 5 or number 6. And so Lawrence has potentially got an opportunity. So as does Overton. It's just going to be very, very intriguing to see who takes a new ball out there. If Mark Wood's a shoo-in, I mean, Leach is going to have to play a spinner, particularly in Antigua. We just watched the Under-19 World Cup and it spun. So Leach, Robinson, Wood, and then take your pick from there. And as far as the batters go, well, yeah, Crawley, Lees, Joe Root at 3, Bairstow at 4, Stokes at 5, and then one of Pope and Lawrence at 6, probably Lawrence, with Ben Folkes, and then all rounders, I suppose. England have got Wokes, who is a very, very good batter. Overton and adds batting depth. It's kind of bare bones, really, isn't it? It's kind of there isn't a great deal of either variety or backup for some specialist positions. Great to see Ben Folkes back out there. I hope he gets an extended run and shows everybody. I mean, the glove work is beyond question. But I hope he shows everybody that has been concerned that his batting isn't quite up to it, that he can play. And if he does that, then he'll get an extended run in the side, I think.
Awesome. Cheers for your time, Butch. Talk to you next week.